You know, the great power of mathematics is that it allows us to translate things that we see in the everyday world into mathematics. And then using all the stuff we learn in our math classes, we can actually analyze and answer things and actually make new insights into our world and our lives. So let's talk about how to translate from mathy things into wordy things. So let's take a look at some examples together. Let's take these algebraic expressions and see if we can convert them to more wordy things. The first one, 5 plus y. Well, you could say the sum of 5 and y. Or you could say 5 is increased by y. Either of those two things represent the mathematical expression 5 plus y. What about w minus 1? Well, there's a couple of ways of talking about that. You could say the difference between w and 1. That's one way, difference. That's a way to represent subtraction. Or we could say w is decreased by 1. There's a phrase that implies subtraction. What about 7.2? Well, there's two ways of reading this. You could say the product of 7 and 2, or you could say 7 multiplied by 2. And in fact, this is sort of weird because the dot is kind of a new thing. Let me say a word about that because it's a little strange. What's with the dot? Well, usually we write multiplication as 7 times 2, the little time sign there. But it turns out there are lots of other ways of representing multiplication in math, and you'll actually use all of them at various points. So let's just sort of highlight multiplication. One way is to use the usual time symbol. Another way is to use that symbol we see there, which is just a dot. So a dot represents multiplication. Another way, believe it or not, we even get lazier than that. Sometimes we don't want to write anything at all. So if we write nothing in between two symbols, then the implied operation is multiplication. Now, this is going to be a little tricky in this example because if I wrote this with nothing in between, it kind of looks like the number 72. So to distinguish that from 72, I'll put little parentheses around each of these. And you see how there's nothing in between? When there's nothing in between, that means multiplication. I could actually write this even a different way. I could write 7 and then just write one set of parentheses around the 2. Again, there's nothing in between the 7 and the 2, so that means that there's an invisible multiplication. Look at all the different ways there are to multiply, at least symbolically. So you should be familiar with all of them because we're going to see a lot of them in different contexts. All right, let's take a look at one last example. X divided by 11. You could say the quotient of x and 11. Or you could just say x divided by 11. Two ways of saying that expression. Neat. So it's important to be able to translate back and forth. Good job.